first recorded interview for Dicks and Politics, recorded by video. I mean, you guys know me. I'm Samantha. I'm the host and producer of Dicks and Politics, and I am so excited to introduce you all to my new friend, Aurora, who is a listener from over in the UK, and we're going to be talking about Brexit. So, Aurora, why don't you tell everyone who you are, exactly where you're from, how you found Dicks and Politics, and something about you that not a lot of people know.
Hi, everyone. My background is kind of weird. I was born and raised in Italy, but my mom's from California, so that's why I sound different. And I currently live in the UK. I've been here for about 5 years, and I came here to do my psychology degree. And in the meantime, the whole Brexit debacle has started. So I'm really excited to talk about it and just sort of air what my experience has been about it. But yeah, I'm an avid listener. I listen to you guys every week.
Oh, you're so sweet.
I think I found you guys through, I also listened to Martinis and Murder, and you guys had
okay.
So I was like, oh, what's going on? And then, I mean, what can be wrong with a podcast that's called Dicks and Politics? So I just kind of
exactly
with it. And you guys just, I think you do a really good job at sort of giving people information, and like you said, just kind of letting them make their own minds up, but give them the basic necessities. So
thank you.
Yeah, I'm really happy to be here.
Well, we're so glad to have you, and it's funny. So Darren Karp is one of my best friends, and when I started, I literally woke up one morning, was like, I'm doing a podcast. Darren, what kind of microphone do I get? She's like, get a Snowball. I'm like, okay, fine. And then a month later, she goes, so your podcast like popped up in my like recommended feed for looking at everything else. You guys must be doing really well. And I'm like, oh, well, thank you. We are. Will you come on and do an episode with us? And she said yes. And it was so much fun. I don't know what got into me that day, but I know you listened to that episode. I couldn't stop laughing.
Oh my God.
So bad.
That was so funny.
And everyone's like, can you please stop? But I couldn't help it. But anyways, so this is proof. We're always telling people, please email us, please DM us, please comment on all of our stuff. If there's something that you want us to know that we haven't covered or that we don't know, please let us know. So you, Aurora, you slid right into our DMs, and that was the end of that. So I want to talk to you about Brexit. So Corbin and I covered Brexit on, what was it? I guess it was last week's episode. And we were sort of talking about, okay, so we have the government shutdown here in the US, and like, we think things are bad here. Oh my God, like, let's talk about what's happening in the UK. So we already ran through the history, but I'm really interested to get your perspective, because I listen to NPR a lot, and I hear a lot of interviews from people that are in the UK, and they're kind of talking about how it's sort of like a hurry up and wait. Like, we've been hearing about it for so long, but like, now that it's actually happening, people don't really know like how to prepare. So can you describe to the listeners what's going on over in the UK? How are people feeling? What is sort of the word on the street?
Sure. So the way that I kind of talk about Brexit is like a messy divorce. Everyone is now trying to figure out like who's going to get the house and who's going to get like the nice summer house in the Hamptons, and no one really knows what is going on. And then there's sort of the kids in the middle who are people from the EU who are living here, and I consider myself one of them because I'm here on my Italian passport.
Yeah.
We're kind of, okay, great. So you did this whole vote to kind of get rid of us, but now what do we do, you know?
Right.
So I found it quite fascinating because the vote was a whole sort of mess when it started. No one really wanted to vote for it. And then David Cameron wanted to do the referendum.
Right.
And then everyone was kind of quite hopeful. I think it was a quite similar situation to the one in the US, where a lot of people were very confident that Hillary would win. So then there wasn't a huge turnover. And then all of a sudden, everyone was wait. What? It's 3 a.m. I'm watching the polls and just not adding up. So I had to do that twice in 2016. It was a bad year. I was very stressed. From June to November, I was like, I don't really know what's going on.
Yeah.
Yeah, so obviously London is quite liberal. Everyone's really open. There's loads. It's really multicultural. So everyone I was talking to was like, "Oh yeah, let's remain. Everything's gonna be fine." And then exactly. And then when the votes started coming in throughout the night, people started getting a bit more serious. And then the next day, it was like, okay, well, here we are, and now what's gonna happen? So I think for the past sort of 2 years, going on 3, there's been this sort of big confusion as to what is actually going to happen. So right. I think, first of all, Theresa May has been given the worst job in the history of jobs. Like, I can't fault her, to be honest. She's done quite a good job with what she's been handed, because no one would have wanted that in the first place. No. But everything she's trying to put forward is not being passed by the parliament. So I don't really know what she's going to do now. And they're meant to leave at the end of March, but nothing's confirmed yet. So it's all a bit
everything is sort of up in the air. I feel for you so much, because we're very much feeling the same way. Like, okay, great. So the government shutdown has ended. And of course, Trump was like, I won. And everyone's like, no, no, you didn't. And so now all these military families and all these other, government employed executives are like, so, okay, so now we're going to get paid for the work we did. So I guess thanks for that. But like, is this going to happen again? Because now people are talking about, okay, well, good. It might happen again, though. So prepare for it. I hate sort of the turmoil. And I think it's been interesting to watch the reaction here. And I'm going to go a little outside of this for a second. So I think it was about 7 years ago, I lived in Costa Rica for an entire summer. And what was interesting about it was that I was living in a house with, I think, 9 other people, 8 or 9 other people that were all my age, but we were from all over the world. So we had Australia, the UK, US, and Canada all in one house. And 7 years ago, things, Obama was in office and things were kind of ho-hum. But what I found really interesting, and I hate to even admit this, but we were all sitting around one night, and I don't know who, but someone was like, let's do like a world quiz. And the American kids didn't know anything about anything that was going on outside of the US. So thinking back to that time and that sort of egocentrism of, oh, well, I'm just going to worry about what's happening here in my own country. It's been interesting for me to watch the other millennials in corporate America, because they are quite aware of what's happening over in the UK, and they are concerned about it. And I wonder if it's because we're able to sort of relate to you guys and what's happening now. But with us, I think if I was somewhere else in the United States, like if I was somewhere in Michigan, and I was connected to someone that worked in the auto industry, or if I was out in, Idaho or something like that, and I was connected to someone in farming, I wonder what the conversations are like out there. But here, people aren't really that like panicked, I guess, is a good way to put it. I wonder if London is in any sort of like a frenzy, or are people sort of the same way, like,
no,
what can I do?
No one's really panicked. Everyone, I think it's become more of sort of a running joke. Oh, let's see where they actually take this to. Everyone, like, we've come to realize that they can't start mass deporting people, and they can't just close things off. And I think the funniest thing is people worrying about where they're going to get their cheese from once the borders do shut, because it's like, oh my God, where am I going to get my camembert? And it's like, because I need that cheese. But I think in the UK, it's become more of a sort of joke that, oh, okay, well, we've left the EU, now what happens? But in a way, I think in the US, there is more of a sort of serious undertone. Maybe not in New York, like you said. I think big city, you're surrounded by people from loads of different backgrounds. I think you're a bit more part of a unit, no matter what is happening politically. But like you said, if you are in middle America and you've been promised things that haven't really come true, that can definitely be related to what happened here in the UK, because they were promised that all the money that was going to the EU would then be spent on the national healthcare system.
Right.
And then the day after the vote, they went back on that and said, no, we never promised it. And there were pictures and evidence of it. So I think in both cases, there were a lot of promises to get the votes and to try to persuade people by telling them, oh, I know exactly what you want. I know exactly what makes you happy. Vote for me and I will help you get that. And then everyone sort of went back on it. Or
sort of fell apart, which is really too bad.
Yeah, it is. And I think at this point, even people who did vote to leave are trying to sort of find a way to see the positive sides of it, and they maybe don't even want that, because I know in Parliament, whenever there's debates going on, everyone's trying to find a way to stay in or make sure that sort of the borders are kept as fluid as possible, and we do really keep things the way they are now, except for the fact that it will now be independent. But I think most people are regretting what has happened. I definitely think so.
Yeah, I think that people here are also starting to kind of regret, even though they still stand firm in their morals and their beliefs. I think that it's becoming obvious that our government is not functioning the way it should. So I'm interested because what's happened over here in the US has really affected specifically my immediate group of friends, and thinking in terms of getting married, starting a family, and purchasing a home. Not so much because we're worried about being deported, because all of us, well, I mean, I wasn't born here. I was born in Thailand, but I'm an American. But sort of observing the political climate is really having a big impact on these bigger life decisions that we face. Is Brexit having an impact on you and your friends and how you're feeling about sort of putting some roots down and starting a family?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think I have quite an even 50-50 split of friends who are local from the UK, sort of born and raised, and people who I met at university who sort of like me came to London to study and then have just sort of stayed here. And I think even people who I know who have been brought up here are thinking, well, maybe I want to go somewhere else.
Yeah.
It's obviously going to affect everyone's jobs and the ability to find a job even, and even big companies who work internationally, they'll be moving out of London and already moving to Dublin or Brussels or places where it will be easier for them to sort of cooperate with the rest of the world. So
I'm sure Dublin is thrilled.
Yeah, exactly.
Ireland is like, please, Amazon, Google, everyone come on over. Oh my God. Well, yeah, I mean, people here joke about like, oh, I'm gonna move to Canada, or oh, I'm gonna go here, I'm gonna go there. Like, I mean, I love the cold weather. I'm not gonna lie, I've thought about it. I look at I'm very, very lucky, first of all, to work in an industry that isn't going anywhere. I work specifically in software, so SaaS, software as a service, and I work for a company that has a machine learning technology, which is like, everyone was talking about AI, right? Like a year ago, everyone's like, oh, AI. And now it's so oversaturated. And I'm very lucky that I'm like, AI, we have machine learning. So I'm very lucky, but I think in terms of my friends who work for these companies that rely so much on foreign relations and foreign trade and how it's affecting them, I think about my friends down south that voted for Trump, and I have a friend, and I won't divulge her name, but I have a couple friends that are down in Kentucky, and they voted for Trump. And, under Trump's presidency, they were able to buy a home, and, that was great. But now they're pregnant, and they work for an auto manufacturer, and they are barely able to sort of, they're surviving, but they're not thriving. They're not saving a ton of money. For them to, get health insurance, it's taking huge chunks of money out of their paycheck, which is, I'm experiencing the same thing. So when I think to myself, well, if I moved to Canada, I'd have universal health care and they would pay for it. So at least I could take care of myself and my family, being in a place in the world where I'm like, shit. Okay, so when I have a child, I'm already paying a few $100s out of my paycheck, every paycheck just for me. So I'm wondering, when looking at your situation, are the boomers, the older people, are they having a different reaction? Are they calmer? Are they more frantic? Or is everyone collectively kind of feeling the same, like, oh shit, now what do we do?
I think in a way, the older generations were a bit more frantic for the vote because they wanted to get sort of their way, if you will. It was pensioners mainly who voted to leave. And the younger generations were a bit calmer because they took for granted the fact that it wouldn't go through. And then now I think the situation has kind of switched. The people our age are kind of more worried about sort of what is going to happen and how this is going to affect sort of our professional future, our home future, everything. And the older generations, I think, may have already gotten bored of it. They're probably like, okay, I've done my bit. Whatever happens, happens. I'll see whether I can keep my house in France, but if I can't, hey ho. So I think it's just everyone's a bit confused. But I think in comparison to what is happening now in the US, there's a bit of a lower degree of a threat, if you will, just because politics in the US, when you are president, you have a lot of responsibilities. And under sort of Trump's America, there have been a lot of problems, i.e., gun control and women's rights and all that sort of stuff that he could possibly change, but has just not been changed at all. Whereas with Brexit, we don't have those issues. It's mainly foreign trade and what will happen to people's rights who are currently in the UK but don't have a citizenship.
Yeah.
So I think in a way it can't really be compared to that degree. But yeah, I mean, I think.
Are you finding that there's sort of maybe a level of empathy that's sweeping the UK? Because that's a big shift that I've experienced here, especially in New York, where everyone is so accepting and we're all like, oh, great, here you are. So are you finding that as well, that now there is a category of people potentially that are at risk, whether it's for deportation or having their jobs affected by foreign trade and so on? Are you finding that there's sort of a nice societal shift?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think now they're also coming to realize that if Brexit does go through the way that they're planning to, it will affect their economy and it will affect everything that they have voted so hardly to maintain. It's going to have an impact no matter what. Obviously, what will actually happen to EU citizens residing in the UK is still unknown, but there was talk of having a fee, so people would need to apply for a permit to be in the UK. And then someone came out saying, well, these people are people who are working, they contribute to the economy, they pay their taxes, they pay rent. Why are you charging them an extra fee just to continue living their lives? So I think, like you said, yeah, there is quite an empathy coming out from the other side who are they're starting to open their eyes and see that actually we are all living on this island. We're all contributing to society. So let's try and make this transition as easy as possible for everyone.
That's good. I mean, I hate to say it like this, but at least there is something sort of good coming out of it. I've noticed that just in the past, maybe, what would you say, 2015, give or take, was when things really started to shift. And I think it's because there were so many racially and religiously charged attacks all over the world, not just in the US, that people really started to open their eyes and be more empathetic and try to at least walk in someone else's shoes for a little bit. So, I think back to when I was a kid and I was getting bullied for the color of my skin and all these different factors that I had no control over. I'm really glad that it's now sort of become cool to be nice and to be different and realize that there is a lot of diversity. So even though we could say things are kind of falling apart, I guess there is a part of humanity that's kind of blossoming out of it that I'm glad to see. But, of course, kindness doesn't solve everything. So, I mean, so you grew up in Italy, your mom's from California, you live in the UK, you went there to study, and you just stayed there. So, what is the worst case scenario for you in all of this?
I guess the worst case scenario would be, I mean, I could always leave and come back with my American passport.
Come hang out with us in New York.
Yeah. But I guess if the worst were come to the worst, I guess I'd need to go back to either Italy or the US and just sort of set up shop there. But I honestly really do not see that happening. There are too many people who are in my similar situation. And I think, as bad as this sounds, before getting people out from the European Union, they'll try to get people out who are not from the European Union. Because I feel like that was the start of this whole horrible situation. And I mean, it's disgusting to think about. And in the days after the vote, there were interviews with people asking them, oh, so why did you vote to leave the EU? And this one person said, oh, I voted to get the Nigerians and the Indians out. And I was like, okay, A, that is the most racist thing I've ever heard. And B, also open a book, because that is not the European Union. Yeah. So why are you just being this person who is just an idiot? And just try to be a bit more accepting of other people who are leaving bad situations to try and find an opportunity for their families, and try to be more inclusive. And they're leaving their own culture to be in a different environment to try to provide for their family. They're not there just because they want to piss you off,
Right. That's the last thing they want to do.
Exactly.
Is be violent and be assholes and live off the system, as we say here in the US. Like, that's just not, that's not it.
No, exactly.
That's not it.
Find a new life for their family because they desperately need it. So yeah, I think they should be more accepting.
I completely agree. I remember waking up, like I said, we try to remain unbiased. And look, I'll say it now, and this is the first time I've said this publicly. I'm a registered Republican. I am. I cannot get behind my party right now for, an entire laundry list of reasons, but I am a registered Republican, and I made that decision back in sort of the mid 2000s. I was in my early 20s, and I was living in my parents' home. I was in my old childhood bedroom, and the job market was absolute crap. I couldn't find a job. I couldn't get myself launched. And it was funny because I think I said this in one of the first episodes, like, Republicans used to be the ones, like, they used to be the ones that were patriotic, and they were all American, and it was everyone deserves a chance, everyone deserves an opportunity. And then, like, I don't know if it was like all the gerrymandering or what, but it shifted, over the last few years very, very severely. But I remember waking up the morning Trump was announced president, and I was talking to someone who basically was like, Sam, like, you're one of the people that he believes shouldn't be here. I'm like, and he's like, no, it doesn't matter that you're a Republican. He's like, listen to me. First of all, you're a woman, okay? You are not white, and you were not born here. And I just remember, I've dealt with racism my entire life. I grew up around some people that were really small-minded, but I always thought that it was reserved to my small town and maybe other small towns. I didn't quite realize that that was the mentality of a lot of people in my country. And I remember feeling so sad and so heartbroken because this is my home. Yes, I was born in Thailand, but the United States of America is my home. I am patriotic to a fault. I mean, like, I said in this exact episode, but later, actually, no, it's not. It's in the upcoming episode of When I Knew that's coming out on Friday. I was telling the interviewee that, like, my father and I started a 4th of July parade in our town because we just love the 4th of July. No offense.
I wanted
to say goodbye to you, but, like, we're very patriotic. And so, I remember feeling so confused and so sad. And it wasn't really until Trump's presidency that I felt like I did need to look over my shoulder, that I felt like I did need to fight harder. I'm in corporate America in New York City, and I'm in a senior sales position. I am the biggest minority in this sector. And so I do feel like I have to fight that much harder. And do I mind? No, because I have a lot of fight in me. I'm very fiery, but does it make me sad? Yeah. And so I can only imagine how other people must feel, refugees or immigrants or whatever, who are just doing their best, like you said, to provide for their families, to breathe cleaner air, to be able to rest their heads on their pillow at night and get a good night's sleep, all in the name of love, family, and hard work. And when you're so well intended and your country is just like, oh, get out.
Yeah.
You're like, great. So, I don't know. It's hard to say because we always try to think like, okay, what's next? What's next? I don't know. I don't know what's going to happen here. I don't know what's going to happen there. All I know is that I feel that it's in a lot of ways very needless. And I feel sad, especially for the people who are like, so do I stay and pay a fee, or do I go, or do I stay and not pay a fee? But then I'm not going to be able to walk down the street. Like I feel for the people who feel very trapped. If you had to come up with so we talked about worst case scenario, you're always welcome here in New York. I've got a huge apartment. I have a massive blow up mattress. You can come visit me anytime.
Oh, thank you.
What would be, yeah, what would be like your best case scenario if you could wave your magic wand and just fix all of this? What would that look like to you?
I think in utopia, the situation would be everyone would sort of coexist peacefully without treading on each other's feet, I think that is one of the main issues that people have faced. They feel like the other side is kind of imposing on them. So I think everyone should just, live your best life. Do whatever you want to do without, obviously, don't affect other people's lives. Don't do anything illegal.
Right.
I mean, that's just
just saying.
Just a law to live by. Don't do anything illegal. But just try and do what makes you happy day by day. And whether that is staying in the UK and fighting for what you want, if it is a future here, or going somewhere else and feeling a bit more peaceful because you feel more accepted, or whatever it is. I think the ideal world would be having sort of, I think, loose barriers between the countries, because people have grown up, I mean, our entire generations have grown up being able to fly freely between sort of the UK and other countries. And that the UK is the first country to leave the EU. So either way, it was going to be the first divorce ever. But I just think, yeah, it would be great if people could just, once it's over, look at it, learn from it, and try to be better when politics gets tough in the future. Because I think even in the US, it was great. At the midterm elections, we saw loads of young people coming out to vote, and it kind of flipped on its head. People saw in the past 2 years, we haven't been happy with what's been going on. So we want to make sure that what the America that we want comes to fruition. And I think that is what we should look forward to. Unfortunately, we need to make the mistakes to learn from them. But I would just like to see more inclusion in the future, I'd say.
How do you think experiencing all of this is going to affect you? And I'm not trying to put this on you, like one day when you have kids, because not everyone wants to have children, but do you think it's going to change the way that you encourage them to see the world, and change the way that you encourage them to interact with different types of people?
I think living in fear is never a good thing, especially when raising children. And I think kids should be able to make their own mistakes, but if we can sort of guide them towards being as positive and as inclusive and as accepting as we possibly can, then that is already half of the job done. Because I think, like you were saying with bullying, if we see that happening in our children's lives, then we need to act on it and not make them understand that that is an accepted thing. When kids who bully will then grow up to be bullies unless they are stopped.
Yep.
So I think as parents, if we do wish to become them, we will need to keep in mind what has happened to us in our generation and while growing up, and we need to try and act and stop that before it even becomes a thing.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think that experiencing what happened to me, but also watching all these racially and politically and religiously charged events throughout my young adulthood, when I'm kind of just trying to launch myself into my own life, I definitely think it's going to have an impact on the way that I parent one day. And just really make sure that I'm opening my kids' eyes as wide as I possibly can, and really making sure that they experience, all sorts of different foods and religions and countries, and because it's so important. I mean, especially like going back to what I was saying about being in Costa Rica, and literally the American kids were like, they couldn't tell you who the prime minister of the UK was, and I'm sitting there like, are we serious right now? And the kids from the UK, Australia, and Canada, and these were kids that were younger than the Americans were. They knew everything about everything, and we looked so dumb. And so I really hope that, that I can raise my children to be a little bit more broad-minded by habit. But anyways, well, thank you very much, Aurora, for joining us. This was so much fun. And we interview a lot of people, and I say this all the time, we kind of never know what we're going to get, but you are just world class. And I think you're so terrific, and I can't thank you enough for all of your encouragement and for tuning in. And I'm so glad that you sort of get our mission. We've been getting a lot of crap lately because they're like, this isn't a political podcast. I'm like, well, no, it's not just a political podcast. And part of the reason why we wanted to have these conversations about what's happening in the world is because we wanted to connect with people like you, who maybe are living it, or you're living over there, or you have a different perspective, and hoping that people like you will write in and be like, hey, so you said this and I want to go off of that. Just, it means so much. So thank you for that.
Well, thank you, Samantha. It's meant a lot for me to be able to sort of share my opinion on it and just sort of what I've lived through it. But no, I absolutely love the podcast. And people who say that it's not a political podcast should read what it says on the label.
Yeah, right. It's dicks and politics. Someone actually made a suggestion last week. They're like, I suggest Samantha watches Schoolhouse Rock. And I'm like, I love Schoolhouse Rock. Thank you. I will go back and look at that. So thank you again for joining us.
Thank you, Samantha, and congrats on everything.
Thank you.
You're listening to a special edition episode of Dicks and Politics. This interview was recorded in early January 2019, completely last minute and off the cuff, with 12 alpha males. These guys are gorgeous, they're rich, and they all live, work, and date here in New York City. We're going to be talking to them about what makes them alpha males, what influences their decisions when choosing a mate, but most importantly, how to score one just in time for Valentine's Day. Thanks for joining us. I want to welcome everyone to a very special edition of Dicks and Politics, and the reason why it's special is because I'm sitting in a room with a bunch of alpha males, and we have done a lot of segments for What's Burning, but we haven't had one yet with a bunch of alphas. So I'm going to kind of just back off. I'm going to let these guys talk. And
we're going to amp up the
this is dating in New York City from an alpha male's perspective.
So Andrew, what were you saying?
All right, so I went to this prep school in New Hampshire, okay, and
it's an all-ladies school, yeah.
You can either name names or not. It doesn't matter.
Fucking say the name.
There are, I mean, I can name names, but I'm not going to name names.
All right, fair enough.
When I first got there, I heard about this thing called goggles, right? You know, you get the goggles and...
I'm going to end up there somehow.
you end up thinking that the uglier chicks are actually fucking hot.
Do you mean beer goggles?
It's called beer goggles.
That's what I'm thinking.
But
Okay,
James and I are fair. Do you have more in that? Because we can talk about the mistakes that you've made.
No.
I don't recall any mistakes that I made. Mine is a major mistake.
No,
but
seriously? Okay, so I didn't...
Is he putting a picture on his podcast?
I played hockey.
For some of you who don't know,
I played hockey there. Right.
Well, you said hockey like a Canadian. Say hockey again?
Hockey.
Hockey?
And there really
Wait
wasn't
till he
that
says your
many
name.
good-looking girls there. There was a few fucking hot girls there. There was.
They were hot?
A few.
A few were hot.
But the longer you spent at that school, the more the uglier chicks looked fucking better.
Well, but
Why?
But
No,
that's because when you're hungry, like any food looks like
Yeah.
Was it
I
the
have
pigeon?
eaten- I have-
You guys, one at a time.
I have eaten some really shitty food in third world countries only because I was fucking starving.
And it tastes
Alright,
really
That,
so-
no, it's a real fucking thing.
I know.
And your brain actually makes you
Convinces itself.
yes, that they're acceptable
But-
to do shit with.
But that's a proximity and a radius issue.
Now when you're at a prep school, you don't get to go home. You live in a dorm
Yep.
and you do your shit. That's
But-
it.
But
And you
James
live
and I
with
have
these
talked
people.
a lot about proximity infatuations, and we've talked a lot about radial issues. That's how that works.
So let's
But
hear
you're
more
in your
about
own
that.
box. But you're in your own box.
You're in
That's-
your own box, but if you don't get to see anything
Say box
outside
again.
of that,
Say box again.
no. If you don't get to see anything outside of that, what do you do?
But you don't. But you have to understand the construct that you're existing within, which are your personal constraints.
Okay, you had a point you wanted to make.
Okay, with this point, he's saying uglier girls start to look better. I think you just can't get any, and just standards probably just start dropping lower and lower, and just I can't get her, so I'm gonna go to her. Oh, I can't get her, so on to the next one, and then you can't
Desperation.
You know what I
Yeah,
found?
that's what I think.
It's pure
You just want to
male.
Mhm.
I mean, that's the reason why the human race is what it is, because
But you're
gonna fuck.
Because ugly people can get laid.
Mm-hmm.
I
Yeah,
mean, if you
I
were
agree.
left on an island with
Speaking
the
of
last
ugly
fucking
people.
female on planet Earth, you're gonna fuck her.
But you
You
exist
are.
in that construct. You exist in that construct. So your construct, your barriers, your walls are the beach of that island, are the beaches of that island. You exist within that. However, are you able to see beyond that? So if you live alone, if you live in a studio and you work in this company, and you just go to and from this office and you go home, the only people you find in this office and at your house are the people that you're. But
It's the
that's
same
called, just for the record.
concept.
But that's called propinquity. And propinquity is you are more likely to end up in a relationship with the people that live on the floor of the apartment complex that you live within, than you are to live within people that live on different floors.
It's like-
but that's propinquity.
It's like high school and college.
Yeah, it is. But that's the construct. So propinquity is the
I've never
likeliness.
heard of that in my life.
Yeah, but the propinquity is a likeliness of you to end up with somebody that you are within close proximity and spend time within close proximity. to.
Okay, I have a question.
Alright.
So, I have a question. So, I noticed this when I was back living in New England. And as I've said before on this podcast, when you're not in New York City or a major city, sometimes it's slim pickings. So I noticed that there would be movies that would come out, right? Particularly ones with Paul Rudd, Seth Rogen, all these, where rather than having this gorgeous guy that looks like Brad Pitt or Chris Pine
sex
being
symbols,
the sex symbol, it was sort of a more average looking guy. And I found, especially in my young 20s, that would influence whom I found attractive over the course of the next couple of months, because Hollywood put it in my mind that, maybe not everyone has to look like this dude or the rest of you assholes in here, but rather could look like, a normal guy. Do you think that ever influences who you're attracted to and why?
110%. You don't think so?
Why
I think
do you
society
think they
affects.
make
I think
fucking
society.
Hold on.
But I think society affects entirely who we're attracted.
She's
to.
talking
Okay.
about Hollywood, not
Yeah, but I've been attracted to women because for me, I grew up paying so much attention to movies and media but I lived in a very small town. So in my small town, I was attracted to, propinquity-wise, the women that were in proximity, 204, this, that, and the next. I was attracted to the women that were around me. However, what was beyond my spectrum? What couldn't I see? And that was what was introduced to me via movies and media.
Like
there
Footloose?
wasn't social media, but it was movies. It was the media. And the women that were in these, that were defined society-wise as sex symbols. Yeah.
Yep.
Women that looked like them. For the same reason, I'm attracted to a 1983 Porsche 911 over a 2019 Porsche 911.
Okay, now hang on a second.
But I'm attracted to women that look like the women that I grew up with.
Okay.
That's it.
Perfect.
So Porsches.
So there was something that you wanted to say about how when you can't find whatever, loneliness often brings us to certain decisions, and then I want to get to you.
Well, the Barbie doll, you know,
Okay.
and
no ass.
and all that.
Fuck Barbie dolls.
Or tits.
No, I'm telling you right now, that has an influence on what young children and young women and young men think is attractive.
Dude,
Right.
Girls that you play with
Okay.
American
When I was 6, I used to steal my sister's
Okay.
Barbie dolls. I would go under the table in the dining room and I would take Barbie's clothes off.
Okay. All right. So now I want to get your perspective because you
Control, man.
you're very attractive, but you don't live here. You're from down south. So what's the dating culture like down south? What are your sort of expectations of beauty? What do you look for?
Well, I'll give you an example from when I first moved down there when I was 23 or 24. And we're in the back stock room just doing some work or whatever, and I'm making some small talk with her, saying, hey, what are you going to be doing this weekend? And she says, oh, well, me and my husband are going to be going out furniture shopping and stuff like that. And my whole reaction was like, you're only a year or two older than me. Who the fuck are you married, and why are you doing things that, like, I look at, like, that's something that you do when you're, like, 45.
40, yeah. Yeah.
And that's because I grew up in New York, and then I moved to South Carolina, but, like, it didn't take me too much longer to realize that that was normal
Yeah,
in South
very
Carolina.
much
That
so.
everyone just gets married young, and that's what they want.
Yeah.
And so, as a dude who doesn't want kids or really marriage,
Yeah, it's
finding
interesting.
chicks that are willing to date somebody that doesn't want that, like, I can do long term. I just don't want to have to be in a contract.
So when you first meet a woman and, you know, things start to head in that direction of maybe you guys want to date, maybe you want to hook up, are you upfront immediately with her and you're like, listen, I know this is far down the road, but, like, I don't want to get married, I don't want to have kids?
Using the advice of one of my regulars at my bar, when it comes to the marriage and kids topic, I won't dodge the question. If they ask, I'll be dead honest. But my regular said, you know, I would treat it kind of like you're missing a toe. Where it's not something that you need to tell everybody, but, like, at some point they might ask you, like, hey, why do you walk a little bit funny? Well, I'm missing a toe. But, like, until it's pointed out, until you have to address it, then say nothing. Because, like, I'll let these
Okay.
chicks think whatever they want, and if they say, like, usually it comes up pretty early, though, especially because, like, I'm 32.
In that city where you live.
But it comes up
In
all
the
the
South.
time.
It
Where,
comes
like,
up all the
very,
time here, too,
very
though.
early on, like, at 32, if I'm dating a chick between
Well,
27 and
32.
33 or so, like, she's usually going to be talking about what her life goals are.
But many ladies have children at 19. They're married at 19 or 20 years old.
Yeah, but, like, I met a girl at my bar. She was on vacation. We go out to a bar, have some drinks. Things are going pretty well. And eventually, like, I wanted to get out of there. And I'm like, wait, like, you can go back to your hotel room. You can just go back to my place. And she's like, well, I don't think it would really work out. And I'm like, why? She's like, well, you said you never want to get married or have kids. I was like, you're on vacation. You leave, like, 2 days from now. What did you think this was?
See, now
Well, what?
But it's not even so much, I don't think that she said that because there's going to be miles and distance between you. I think boyfriend number one, you know, when we went on, like our second or third date, I was like, listen, kid, this is what I want.
Kid.
Not right now. Well, he's younger than me. I said, this is what I want. Not right now, but this is what I want eventually.
No.
Are you
Don't
down?
waste my
Yes or
time.
no?
Don't waste my time.
Don't waste my fucking time.
I like
Don't
you,
listen.
but don't waste my time.
In all fairness, when you started doing that, I had just started a career, and not only was I broke, but I could have begged for money on the street and made more money. at that time.
But the
They're
point
doing-
is,
they're
but the
doing
point
real
is, but the
estate.
point is,
But-
early on, day one, you want to make sure your interests are aligned.
Yeah, fair
That's
enough.
all.
But like
That's
I was
all.
also dating several people when you and I first met. So like I really
several.
wasn't.
He was dating me. He
Let
was
me-
dating me.
boyfriend number one and boyfriend number two were
And I'm a
dating.
handful. I'm a
wasn't-
handful. I never gave it up to him. We never slept together.
Oh,
But-
okay.
but-
Well, neither have I. So yeah, we're good.
The thing is,
You're all alphas. You all make crazy money.
I'm
I mean,
broke as
are
fuck.
we? Hold on.
You're not broke.
Potential's there.
Are
right,
we
sure.
all alphas? Or
I'm not so sure about you.
People.
I think that you are, but you're not.
how do you?
You have a gentler way of going about it.
How do you judge who's an alpha?
Okay,
You
so
know
for
how?
me, here's how I
You know
define
how
an
by
alpha.
the statement
Hey.
you said in the beginning of the podcast.
Hey.
That's how.
Get out of here.
We all relate and we all do really well together.
There's a lot of
But
theory that
he
that's
put his arm up, and you put your arm up, and you elbowed his arm down, and that is an
Trust-
alpha characteristic.
Um,
And given the construct that we're in, unfortunately for me, I have the alpha card just because we're in my office.
Okay,
But
so
what were you going
here,
to say?
I would
But
never.
your question to me.
I would never try to advocate that I am not an alpha. I know I'm an alpha.
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
I mean,
whether
we know you're right too. We know
whether
you're
you
right too.
think it or not.
Oh, we-
So
we
let
know
me
you're
let me explain how I define it. Finish what you want to say, but
My
let me
question
explain how I
to
define it.
you,
Mhm.
as a female,
Yeah,
how
I am.
how do you judge
Mhm.
who's an alpha and who's not?
Okay, so there's a couple different factors that go into it. First and foremost, it has to do with looks. You're all very good-looking men. I'm looking around the room. I like what I see. So that's number one. Number two, every single one of you knows how to dress. You dress for your body type, you dress for your age, and you dress for your profession. You all have different ways of doing it, but you do it. So for me, an alpha has a lot to do not only with those two things, but your ability to sort of take control of a conversation, but also let it go two ways. I think a lot of times people think an alpha is just a guy who's going to come in and say, all right, here's how it's going to go, here's what it is, that's the end of it. But actually an alpha is open to debate and open to conversation. Now, I see you inhaling.
So, hey,
Now the
because I don't want to
third,
really
now
say
the
the
third
names.
thing,
Hey.
you guys are all different types of alpha. But what all of you guys, I think, probably realize, and I think a few of you will admit it, I have a feeling a couple of you might not, is because of your looks, because of your physical appearance, I don't know if you guys, and boyfriend number two, we've talked in great length about this, I don't think you guys realize sort of the influence, power, and pull that you have over women. Because ultimately, you're nice guys, you're successful, you have really healthy friendships with not only your friends, but most presumably all of your family members. Whatever, you guys are fucking catches. But it's interesting to me because you guys go about it in a different way. You're a very gentle alpha, but you're an alpha. But ultimately, girls are going to look at you. Women are going to look at you and be like, you know what? Ultimately, whether this guy wants the same shit as me right now or not, whether, we're totally aligned or not, whether we're on the same page or not, these are the kinds of guys that I want to end up with. These are the kinds of guys that I want as a partner in life and a father to my children and on my fucking arm. And that's it.
I'm going.
All right,
I don't
go.
want to pick up.
You've had enough time,
All right.
boyfriend number two.
How do you determine that? You said you just know, but how if that person is just bluffing you and you don't know because he's such an alpha that he's really telling you everything you just wanted to hear and you believe everything he's saying just by the way he's persuading it to you and you think he's an alpha, right?
I think that's a great question. I think that I personally, this is Samantha, by the way, I personally can tell the difference because I have interviewed, hired, fired, interacted with all sorts of different types of people, personally and professionally. So I can usually tell pretty quickly whether or not a man is bullshitting me, whether or not they're being genuine. Like, I can tell pretty fast. Boyfriend number one for you. When I first met you, I knew instantly when I met you that you were an alpha. But I also knew that there might be a nicer, gentler, softer side to you. Because I could tell that right away because of how I met you and who you were friends with.
He is an alpha. You're right. There's no question about it.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I'm saying.
And getting back to the question and revert to back originally what the gentleman said, he said, as I was there longer, the ugly girls got hotter. I would have a conversation with someone in this conference room that we're doing right now, is saying this. I think it's false. It's not that they're just getting hotter because they're just because you know him long. I think he's just getting prolonged to drinking more and saying, "Oh my God, that girl was ugly." But then when you have a couple of drinks, you're like, "Damn, she's really beautiful." It just might
Is that
be
how
more.
you feel about me?
No, I never said that. But it's more or less of a conscience thing at the moment. Like I was speaking to my colleague here, that's what happened.
We were talking about earlier how Hollywood portrays these women and we're naturally attracted to them. I think when people have like drinks, deep down, it really comes out to what they really want, and that's when they're attracted to exactly what they are. Like other people might not think that they're hot, but when you're drunk,
you in your heart, you do.
That's when you're like the most honest person, right? Like we can all agree on that. And you find this girl, and deep down, that's when you know that that's the kind of person you like. But when you're sober, you're putting on this front like, oh, I want that girl with that body because that's how society portrays the hot women.
Yeah.
So I think it's not that the women get like uglier. It's just that's what you really want deep down.
I think they get more attractive.
Drunk sayings.
Have you ever experienced a situation, or have any of you ever experienced a situation where you've seen someone and the more you drink, the more attractive they start to become?
So back to the point that I met a girl. This is early iPhone days, and we had an app. And basically, anybody who had this app and you had an iPhone. Remember, there wasn't like 8 billion people that had iPhones. There was like 208 people that had iPhones.
To be precise.
We both had this app, and we ended up at this bar. It was a beachfront bar. We're sitting at the bar, and I'm like, "Hey, I think the chick that I added on the app, I have 2 people on the app." In the bar with us because both the points are on top of each other, and my point is this, and her point, we're in the same place. And it's like, oh, that's interesting. I look across the bar, and I'm like, that girl looks like the picture of the girl that's on the app. So we talked about it. We started talking, we had a lot more to drink, and this girl who she was
5 or a 6.
She was 6. On like the international scale. We're not being nice. We're not being mean. She was 6. She was 6. No question about it. A couple of drinks later, she was 9.5. And I don't know how. We'll go 8.5 to 9. Really.
Isn't that crazy?
But this is both of us. This is 2 people involved. And then we hung out with her. We went back to her house, and one of us, myself, ended up in her bedroom, and we played this game for the next, 14 months or something. We would go out as friends, not interested in doing this, that, or the next, and then 2 drinks later, like the full court press was on, and this girl.
It wasn't 2 drinks.
Yeah, it was 2 or 3 or 7 drinks, but the point is that she was. I don't know. She was like cross-eyed. You couldn't, and you couldn't detect it when you had a couple of drinks.
Or
she was a little overweight and you couldn't detect it.
1 second.
But point is that you had a couple of drinks, and the full court press went, and there was competition.
So, if you were stuck on an island.
Oh, we're back to the island, ladies and gentlemen.
No.
We've returned to the island.
A position I find myself in often.
If you were stuck on an island with this woman, naturally, you would find yourself going through the same motions.
I would
slowly over time. You would fall into the she's getting hotter.
Sober?
She's getting.
Where are you going? Where are you going?
No,
because
where
it's
are you going?
going back
that's
to the whole
a
proximity
real
thing.
fucking thing. She would get hotter and hotter and hotter, and then you would end up fucking her.
All right. What do you want to say? Number 9.
I would distill the
You
coconut
said you wanted
juice.
to say one thing.
I would make alcohol,
And then die.
and we would populate the island.
Okay, quiet.
I was at this house party once,
Quiet.
and there was this chick there. First of all, I didn't know this, but she was a lesbian, and she was.
There's nothing wrong with that.
There's not, but she was like super fucking weird. She must have been like a 5.
That's when you have to
Not
decide.
even. Like, I don't know. Like, let's say like 5 to 6. And my cousin's coming over, and I'm like talking to him on the phone. I'm drunk, and I'm like, yo, I kind of want to fuck this girl. And my cousin's like, okay, fine, whatever, like talk to her, whatever. And then she keeps getting more and more attractive. My cousin comes over. He looks at the girl. He was like, what the fuck is wrong with you? She's weird as fuck, and she's fucking like not even average. She's like below average. And I don't know, she kind of looks hot. Then my cousin gets drunk, And he was like, yo, you should fuck her. She's kind of hot.
Oh, no. All right, I have a question for you guys. And I want you to give me, like, 1 to 2 sentence answers. For all the ladies that are out there that want to score men like you,
I'm sorry.
Quiet. Yes.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, wait. Apologies, yes.
Reevaluate
But seriously, when we meet you guys, you're not gonna. You guys add value to my life, but I don't sleep with any of you, so it's all good. All right, but seriously, you know, you meet a girl out, say New York City, you meet a girl out at a bar. You know, what can we do? And I want a quick, short answer. What can we do to truly, deep down inside, captivate your attention so that you, at the very least, give us your attention, your respect, and
super easy,
a little bit of a chance?
Pay attention, like be engaged in the conversation, and don't look at your phone every fucking 30 seconds.
All right, good. Number 1.
Wear less makeup, please.
Okay, that's a dig at me. I've got a full face on.
Just-
Number 9.
Just get to the point.
Okay.
That's what it comes down to.
Number 2.
Just be engaging, have a conversation, be attractive. Don't fuck me.
Okay.
And that's if things are gonna go anywhere, we can't fuck.
Okay.
Boyfriend number 2 is looking to be celibate.
But no,
Stop.
but I'm looking for a serious. I'm looking for, if things are gonna go
Close.
anywhere, you don't fuck the first night.
All right.
And as a guy, I can tell you, my
Is it
prerogative
impotence?
is to fuck.
Okay.
But as a woman, your prerogative should be not. I mean, maybe it's double standard.
wrap it up,
Maybe
wrap
it's
it up.
fucked up. But point is, we can't.
Don't fuck you on the first date.
Yeah.
Don't give it up too easy.
If you want me to want and feel more want, we can't fuck right off the
Fine.
bat. That's
Number
all.
10.
Wait, just to clarify.
Just don't give everything away the first night.
Samantha looks gorgeous in her makeup.
Oh, thanks. All right. 10. Go.
Don't be better than me. Don't think you're better than
Aha,
somebody
that's a
else.
good one.
Yeah.
Okay.
You know, and pay attention. And if I ask a question, you know, maybe engage and be nice. That's
Mhm.
it. Just be nice.
11.
Don't just be like a wise ass, you know? Be like,
Mhm.
or like, don't have like this expectation of like you want this. I don't know. What's that movie? What's that?
Which
show?
one?
With
Just Sandlot.
With
Sandlot,
Chuck
Sandlot.
Bassett, and like don't expect.
Oh,
Chuck
Gossip Girl. Oh, yeah,
Chuck
yeah.
Bass to show up at
Okay.
a fucking bar, and you're trying to meet him. You know, you're meeting real world fucking guys. Like not everyone's fucking rich
Mhm.
and has this mansion. You know, just
Be
you
a
know,
person.
Be a person. Don't expect the fucking world from every
Alright.
guy that you're gonna meet at a bar.
Have a sense of humor. Like, be
Oh,
willing to
fuck
laugh at a
yeah.
joke. Like, don't take yourself or me too seriously because it's a first date or
100%.
we're at a bar. It doesn't fucking matter.
Yeah.
Laugh.
Yeah.
Yeah, I completely. So
Like,
I
don't
find it
take
interesting that
yourself seriously.
I find it
Yeah, I don't
interesting
take
that
myself
all of
seriously.
You
you.
couldn't said it any better.
I find it really interesting that all of you. I'd like to point out, none of you said wear high heels. None of you said wear a tight dress. None of you said, you know, slap on the makeup, do your hair, whatever. None of you said that. Every single one of you said, engage in conversation. Don't take yourself too seriously. Have a sense of humor. Don't fuck me on the first date,
Be on
and
the
just
same
be
level.
a real person.
Yeah.
Well,
I
that's
think that's
because-
great advice because the reason why I find it interesting is because so many women think, oh my gosh, I have to look amazing. I have to be clever. I have to be, you know, not necessarily superior, but I have to make myself seem like a catch. But it's not really even about that. Just be a fucking person.
hasn't
I
our
think it's
media,
mutual.
Hold on, let me think it's mutual. Hasn't our media and our society kind of primed us for that sort of attitude? though?
Exactly.
I mean,
Media
like
and society.
you watch TV shows, whether on HBO, Showtime, even syndicated cable, and all of it is about, you know, one night stands and sleeping with random people and kind of
Sounds
just
wonderful.
Yeah, I mean, look, in Hollywood wise, it sounds great, but in reality, it doesn't actually work. It don't work that way. So I kind of get the idea that like it could be. It could be something that we've been primed for a very long time,
Absolutely.
to where it's become just like.
Well, that's why I
Way too
wanted to
okay,
do this
yeah.
interview because, yeah, we have absolutely, as we've touched on a lot in this conversation, we are primed by Hollywood, by the media, by our friends, whatever, to
But
sort
I think
of
more
have
so
this
women are primed by
expectation.
it than
Yeah.
men.
No, I
Can't
know.
do that, man.
I'm saying we as in all of us.
No. I think agreed. I think women are more induced into the media than men.
Yeah, that's true as
They
well.
may pay more
You were
attention,
talking about like
though.
the wear
They're
high
trying to
heels,
be-
wear the tight dress, all things that like slap on a lot of makeup. Those are all things that women do to try and make them that they think are going to make them more attractive. Whereas in reality, I think you guys will agree with me on this one. Like, as long as like you don't look like a homeless person, like as long as you're dressed at like some modicum of decency, then whether or not you're attractive is not going to be affected by your makeup or your clothes or anything else. We're going to be able to tell if you're attractive or not, regardless of what you're wearing.
Absolutely.
And we get past that really fast. As long as you look like you just cared even the slightest bit.
Like maybe you brushed your teeth, maybe.
But like, as long as I can't smell it, then we're good.
Because that's when you know you're too drunk at that point.
That's a new point. No, I love this. I think it's I really appreciate you guys having this conversation with me. I don't know. I feel like there is such a huge disconnect, but there really doesn't have to be. Be a real person, be engaging, have something to say for yourself, laugh, and just have a good time. And you know what? Ultimately, like, if it's meant to be, it's meant to be. You can't control who you fall in love with, you know, but you can control.
You want somebody who's trying. You want somebody who's trying to be their best self.
You can't.
And when you're in the relationship, you also want somebody who's still trying to be their best self.
And I'd also like to say that there have been, first of all, full disclosure, I'm walking into this room. I've got full hair and makeup. I'm on a tear because I had a 4-hour presentation that I totally slayed. I have thigh-high boots on and a tight dress. But how many times? But
some bald people.
There are some bald people here. But how many times have I walked into this office? How many times have I come around you guys in fucking leggings and a baggy t-shirt with no makeup? And we still could have had this conversation.
But you know what it is?
It's my personality.
What you're saying, you've just been around a lot. And
you guys know me.
Yeah, that's fun. And you're around us. And the thing is it's a more of us, a mutual respect. We know you as more or less, not as the girl we're going to look at, as a girl as our friend. Which I think is a different boundary. We could all say that we have friends that are women that are just our friends, and there are women who we get more intimate with. Can we all agree?
There you go.
Very
well, thank you guys.
Very much so.
Thank you guys so much for agreeing to do this conversation with heavy amounts of scotch, but completely on the fly. I appreciate it. Again, this is Samantha from Dicks and Politics. Thank you very much for listening. Thanks for tuning in. Follow us on Instagram, all that good shit, and we'll talk to you guys later.
Woo! Thank you for listening to Dicks and Politics.
Digestible and unfiltered content about men, money, and moments.
New episodes every Wednesday.
Don't forget to subscribe.